They say guilty men can't stand still at gravesides. They fidget, they check their watches, they say their piece and leave. But on September 28, 1946, General Dwight Eisenhower stood frozen at a grave in Luxembourg for so long that the photographers got uncomfortable. 5 minutes of absolute silence, no movement, no prayer, just staring at a white marble cross. The other generals who came with him shifted their weight, cleared their throats, wondered when this would end. But Eisenhower didn't move. He was staring at the name carved into the marble. General George S. Patton, Jr. Now, here's where this story gets dark. Patton had been dead for 10 months. Not 10 days, not 10 weeks, 10 full months. He died on December 21, 1945, in a German hospital after a mysterious car accident that broke his neck. And in those 10 months, Eisenhower, his old friend, his commanding officer, the man who controlled his entire career, never came. Not to the hospital where Patton lay, paralyzed and dying. Not to the funeral on Christmas Eve. Not once in the winter, spring, or summer of 1946. Until this day. Until the press was invited. Until the cameras were rolling. And when he finally came, he couldn't leave. The other officers started walking back to the cars. Eisenhower didn't follow. He just stood there, staring at that cross like it had answers he'd been searching for. What was going through his mind? Was he remembering their friendship that started 27 years ago? Was he replaying their victories across Europe? Was he thinking about the arguments, the shouting matches, the bitter end? Or was he thinking about something else entirely? Because Patton's death wasn't normal. The accident was strange. The hospital had no security. The reports disappeared, and the questions never stopped. Did Eisenhower know something? Did he suspect something? Is that why he stood there so long? If you want the full story of what happened between these two men, the friendship, the war, the mysterious death, and the guilt that brought Eisenhower to this grave, subscribe right now. Because what you think you know about Patton and Eisenhower is only half the truth. Comment below, what do you think Eisenhower was really thinking? Let's figure this out together. Let's go back, way back. Before the war, before the fame, before everything went wrong. Camp Meade, Maryland. September 1919. Major Dwight Eisenhower was bored out of his mind. World War I had ended a year ago, and he'd spent the entire war stuck stateside training troops. Never fired a shot, never saw combat, never got his moment. He was 39 years old, and his career was going nowhere. Then he met Captain George Patton. Patton was different, 34 years old, already a legend. He'd commanded tanks in the Meuse-Argonne offensive, got shot leading his men from the front, came back with medals and scars and stories that made other officers jealous. But more than that, Patton believed in something. He believed tanks were going to change warfare forever. And Eisenhower believed it too. They met at the infantry tank school, both assigned to study these massive, clunky machines that most Army brass thought were expensive junk. The Mark VIII weighed 28 tons and broke down constantly. The Renault FT was better, but still primitive. But Patton and Eisenhower saw the future. They spent hours, sometimes entire days, out in the Maryland fields, testing tanks, timing them, studying how they moved across different terrain. Patton would drive them himself, bouncing across ditches, crashing through obstacles, pushing the machines to their limits. Eisenhower watched, analyzed, took notes. His mind worked differently than Patton's. Where Patton saw glory and speed and violence, Eisenhower saw logistics and supply lines and strategic possibilities. They were opposite personalities. Patton was fire, loud, profane, explosive. He wore custom uniforms and ivory-handled pistols. He quoted ancient military history and believed he'd been a warrior in past lives. Eisenhower was ice, calm, diplomatic, methodical. He wore standard-issue everything. He studied poker probability and organized football plays like military operations. But somehow, they clicked. They started having dinner at each other's homes. Mamie Eisenhower and Beatrice Patton became friends. The families celebrated holidays together. Their kids played in the same yards. And late at night, after the wives went to bed, Patton and Eisenhower would sit on the porch and talk about the next war. Because both men knew it was coming. The Treaty of Versailles had humiliated Germany. Economies were collapsing. Nationalism was rising. Another war wasn't a question of if, it was when. When it comes, Patton said one night, tanks won't be support vehicles. They'll be the tip of the spear, fast, aggressive, unstoppable. Eisenhower nodded. We'll need commanders who understand speed, who can move armies like chess pieces. Patton grinned. You'll be that commander, Ike. You've got the brain for it. And you'll be the one executing it, Eisenhower replied. You've got the guts. It was a prophecy. Neither man knew how accurate it would be, but their friendship nearly ended before it started. In 1920, both men published articles arguing that the Army needed independent tank divisions. They wanted tanks separate from the infantry, fast, mobile strike forces that could break through enemy lines. The Army brass hated it. Tanks were supposed to support infantry, nothing more. Eisenhower and Patton were ordered to shut up, threatened with court-martial if they kept pushing their radical ideas. Eisenhower backed off, kept his head down, played the game. Patton refused. He kept pushing, kept arguing, almost got himself kicked out. Eisenhower watched his friend nearly destroy his own career over a principle, and he learned something important. Patton would never stop being Patton. Brilliant, reckless, unstoppable. 20 years later, when Eisenhower became Supreme Commander, he would need that recklessness, but he would also need to control it. And that's where everything started to break. November 8th, 1942. Operation Torch, the beaches of Morocco. American troops storm ashore in their first major offensive against the Axis powers, and leading the Western Task Force is Major General George S. Patton. Eisenhower is now Supreme Commander. He's in his headquarters in Gibraltar, 300 miles away, watching reports come in. He's coordinating the entire North African invasion. 35,000 troops hitting 3 landing zones simultaneously. It's the biggest gamble of his career. If this fails, America looks weak. The British lose faith. The whole war effort could collapse. But Patton doesn't fail. In 74 hours, he captures Casablanca. French Vichy forces, who were supposed to fight to the death, surrender. Morocco falls. The Western Task Force suffers only 337 casualties. Eisenhower breathes again. But the victory doesn't last long. 3 months later, American forces get absolutely destroyed at a place called Kasserine Pass. February 1943, Tunisia. Rommel's Afrika Korps attacks the Green American II Corps and tears them apart. In 6 days of fighting, the U.S. loses 6,500 men. Equipment abandoned, soldiers routed, officers panicking. It's a disaster. Eisenhower needs someone who can restore order, restore discipline, restore the will to fight. He calls Patton. George, I need you to take command of 2nd Corps. They're broken. Fix them. Patton arrives wearing his polished helmet, riding boots, and those famous ivory-handled pistols. He immediately starts fining soldiers for not wearing ties in combat zones, makes officers shave every day, demands haircuts, inspects equipment. The soldiers think he's insane. But then he starts training them, drilling them, teaching them how to fight, and more importantly, teaching them how to win. He tells them, we're not here to die for our country. We're here to make the other bastards die for theirs. The transformation is unbelievable. In weeks, 2 Corps goes from defeated to dangerous. They attack at El Guetar. They push Rommel back. They start winning. Eisenhower watches from headquarters and thinks, I was right about him. When the war gets hard, Patton is the answer. Then comes Sicily. July 1943, Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily. Patton commands the U.S. 7th Army. British General Bernard Montgomery commands the British 8th Army. The plan is simple. Montgomery drives up the east coast toward Messina. Patton supports him on the west, but Patton hates playing second fiddle to Montgomery. He thinks the British general is slow, cautious, overrated, so Patton decides to race him to Messina. He drives his army across Sicily like a man possessed. His troops cover miles in a single day. They capture town after town. And on August 17, 1943, Patton's forces enter Messina first. He beats Montgomery. He beats the Germans. He wins the race. Eisenhower congratulates him. The press celebrates him. Patton is on top of the world. And then the slapping incidents explode. August 3rd, 1943. Patton visits the 15th Evacuation Hospital near Nicosia. He walks through the ward, talking to wounded soldiers. Stops at a young private sitting on a bench, no visible wounds. "What's wrong with you?" Patton asks. "It's my nerves, sir," the soldier says. Private Charles H. Cool, 26th Infantry Regiment. Patton's face turns red. "Your nerves? You mean you're a goddamn coward." He slaps Cool across the face with his gloves, then grabs him by the collar and drags him toward the entrance. "You're going back to the front. There's nothing wrong with you except cowardice." Nurses and doctors watch in shock. 1 week later, August 10th, another hospital near Santo Stefano. Another soldier with no visible wounds. Private Paul G. Bennett, 17th Field Artillery. "I can't take the shelling anymore," Bennett says, crying. Patton explodes. He slaps Bennett twice, pulls his pistol, and waves it at him. "You ought to be lined up against a wall and shot. In fact, I ought to shoot you myself right now." Medical staff have to pull Patton away. The incidents stay quiet for months. But eventually, journalist Drew Pearson gets the story and broadcasts it to the entire nation. November 1943. The news breaks. America is furious. Newspapers demand Patton be fired. Congressmen call for a court-martial. And Eisenhower has to make a choice. Eisenhower sits in his office in Algiers. The reports are piled on his desk. Letters from Congress, editorials calling Patton a bully. Telegrams from the War Department asking what the hell he's going to do. Fire Patton, and the headlines stop. The war. Controversy dies. The politicians are satisfied. But Eisenhower knows something the politicians don't. He needs Patton, not for Sicily, not for North Africa, for something much bigger, something that's already being planned in secret, the invasion of France, D-Day. Eisenhower knows that when Allied forces hit the beaches of Normandy, they'll need someone who can break out fast, someone who can drive across France without stopping, someone the Germans fear more than any other commander. That someone is Patton. So Eisenhower makes the call. He won't fire Patton, but Patton will pay a price. He orders Patton to apologize, not privately, publicly, to the soldiers he slapped, to the divisions of 7th Army, to everyone. It's humiliating. Patton has to stand in front of thousands of men and admit he was wrong, this man who never admits anything, this warrior who sees apologies as weakness. But he does it, because Eisenhower gives him no choice. Patton survives, barely. But he's finished in the Mediterranean. He'll never command troops in Italy. His career looks over, except Eisenhower has other plans. January 1944. Patton is quietly transferred to England. No announcement, no press conference. He just disappears from the public eye. And then the rumors start. British intelligence begins spreading whispers through French resistance networks. American double agents feed information to German spies. The story is always the same. General Patton is in southeastern England. He's commanding a massive army, the 1st United States Army Group, FUSAG. Over 1 million men, thousands of tanks, preparing to invade Calais. It's all fake. The entire operation is a deception called Fortitude South. Inflatable tanks positioned in fields, fake radio traffic, dummy landing craft floating in harbors, buildings that look like barracks but are just wooden frames. And at the center of it all, Patton. The Germans believe it completely. Why? Because Patton is the Allies' best general. Of course he'd lead the real invasion. Of course they'd give him the main force. So the Germans keep massive divisions at Calais, waiting for Patton, while the real invasion hits Normandy on June 6, 1944. D-Day succeeds partly because of Patton's Phantom Army. German reinforcements stay north, waiting for the real attack that never comes. But Patton isn't at Normandy. He's stuck in England, commanding fake armies while real men die on real beaches. It eats him alive. He writes in his diary, "I'm too old to be a decoy. I should be leading men, not fooling Germans." Finally, on July 6th, 1 month after D-Day, Patton lands in France. He's given command of 3rd Army, and Eisenhower tells him exactly what he needs. Break out, drive east, don't stop. Patton grins. Finally. August 1st, 1944. Operation Cobra. The breakout from Normandy. Patton unleashes Third Army like a hurricane. His tanks move so fast that supply lines can't keep up. In 6 weeks, he covers over 600 miles, from Normandy to the German border. The statistics are insane. Third Army captures 75,000 German prisoners, liberates 12,000 French towns, covers more ground than any army in military history. The Germans are terrified. They call him Der Bluthund, the Bloodhound. They fear him more than any Allied commander. But back at headquarters, Eisenhower is getting nervous. Patton keeps pushing. He wants to drive straight to Berlin. Forget the flanks. Forget logistics. Just attack, attack, attack. Eisenhower says no. He orders a broad front strategy. All Allied armies advance together. Slow, steady, safe. Patton explodes. "We could end this war in weeks if you'd let me go." "George, we have to maintain the alliance. I have to keep Montgomery and the British engaged." "To hell with Montgomery. To hell with politics. Men are dying while we waste time." It's the first real crack in their relationship. September 1944. Patton's Third Army runs out of fuel, literally stops in its tracks. Why? Because Eisenhower diverted supplies to Montgomery for Operation Market Garden, the failed airborne assault in Holland. Patton is furious. He believes Eisenhower is sacrificing American lives for British politics. He's right, but Eisenhower has no choice. The alliance depends on it. The arguments continue. Every meeting ends in shouting. Patton wants to be unleashed. Eisenhower needs him controlled. And then comes the moment that proves Eisenhower was right to keep him. December 1944. The Battle of the Bulge, December 16th, 1944. The Ardennes Forest, Belgium. At 5:30 a.m., German artillery opens fire. Thousands of shells scream through the freezing darkness. Then come the tanks. Tiger IIs, Panthers, hundreds of them. Hitler's last desperate gamble. Operation Wacht am Rhein. A massive surprise offensive designed to split the Allied armies, capture Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace. American forces are completely caught off guard. The German attack shatters the front lines. Entire divisions are encircled. Panic spreads. The town of Bastogne becomes critical. It sits at a crossroads where 7 roads meet. Whoever controls Bastogne controls movement through the entire region. The 101st Airborne Division, the famous Screaming Eagles, rushes to defend it, but they're quickly surrounded, cut off, no supplies, no reinforcements. Just 18,000 American troops holding a frozen town against 5 German divisions. December the 19th. Eisenhower calls an emergency meeting at Verdun, France. Every senior commander is there. The mood is grim. The maps show German forces pushing deeper into Allied territory. The bulge grows every hour. Some generals are talking about retreat, pulling back to defensive positions. Eisenhower walks into the room and says, "The present situation is to be regarded as one of opportunity for us and not of disaster. There will be only cheerful faces at this table." Then he asks the question, "Who can relieve Bastogne?" Silence. The town is surrounded. Winter storms have grounded aircraft. Roads are blocked. Getting an army there quickly seems impossible. Then Patton speaks. "I can attack with 3 divisions in 48 hours. The room erupts. Other generals think he's insane. It's impossible. Third Army is currently attacking eastward toward the Saar River, 90 degrees in the opposite direction from Bastogne. To hit Bastogne, Patton would have to stop his entire offensive mid-attack, pivot 250,000 men 90 degrees north, move them through a blizzard, reorganize supply lines, and attack an enemy that outnumbers them, all in 48 hours. Patton sits there calmly, like he just offered to pick up coffee. One general says, "George, that's impossible. It'll take at least a week just to reposition your corps." Patton grins. "I've already started. Before I left for this meeting, I gave the orders. My staff has 3 contingency plans ready depending on what you decide. If you want Bastogne relieved, I can do it." Eisenhower stares at him. This is vintage Patton, arrogant, reckless, brilliant. "Do it," Eisenhower says. What follows is one of the greatest military maneuvers in history. Patton races back to his headquarters. His staff has been working non-stop preparing movement orders. 3 entire corps, the 3 Corps, the 3rd Corps, and the 8th Corps, have to be repositioned. We're talking about 178 vehicles, 62,000 tons of supplies, 6 full divisions, hundreds of miles of convoy routes, all moving through narrow roads covered in snow and ice, so in sub-zero temperatures, under constant threat of German air attack. Military historians later say it shouldn't have been possible. The logistics alone should have taken weeks to coordinate. But Patton doesn't wait for perfect logistics. He moves. December 22nd, 72 hours after Eisenhower's meeting, the German commander at Bastogne sends an ultimatum to the surrounded Americans. To the USA, commander of the encircled town of Bastogne, the fortune of war is changing. There is only one possibility to save the encircled USA troops from the total annihilation. That is the honorable surrender of the encircled town. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe reads the message, thinks for a second, then writes his famous one-word reply, "Nuts!" The Germans don't understand the American slang. It has to be explained to them. It means no. But McAuliffe knows the truth. Ammunition is running out. Medical supplies are gone. Men are freezing to death. If Patton doesn't arrive soon, nuts becomes a death sentence for 18,000 men. December the 26th, 1944, 4:45 p.m. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams's tanks from the 37th Tank Battalion smash through German lines and reach Bastogne. The siege is broken. Patton did it. Not in 48 hours. He did it in 72. Still faster than anyone thought. Possible. When Eisenhower hears the news, he calls Patton. "George, you did it again. Damn fine work." Patton replies, "This time, Ike, even I impressed myself." But there's tension in the call, because 3 days earlier, British Field Marshal Montgomery held a press conference and implied that British forces, not Patton, saved the Americans at the Bulge. Patton is furious. He threatens to resign, calls Montgomery a tired little fart in front of other officers. Eisenhower has to mediate, again, between his best general and his most important ally. It's exhausting. Patton wins battles but creates political disasters, and Eisenhower is tired of cleaning up after him. The war ends 4 months later, May 8, 1945. Germany surrenders. Patton expects to lead the invasion of Japan. Eisenhower has other plans, and that's when everything falls apart. May 9th, 1945, the day after victory in Europe. Patton is in Bavaria, commanding 3rd Army as they occupy southern Germany. He's expecting orders for the Pacific, expecting to lead armies against Japan. Instead, Eisenhower appoints him military governor of Bavaria. It's a desk job, a political job. Patton hates it. His job now is denazification, removing Nazi party members from government positions, rebuilding infrastructure, managing refugee camps. Patton thinks it's a waste. "I'm a warrior, not a politician," he writes to his wife. But then he starts making statements, public statements, and they're catastrophic. September 22nd, 1945, Patton holds a press conference. A reporter asks about denazification policies. Patton says, "This Nazi thing is just like a Democratic-Republican election fight. It's no different from any other political party squabble." The room goes silent. Did he just compare Nazis to American political parties? Another reporter. "General, are you saying Nazi party membership doesn't matter?" Patton doubles down. "Most ordinary Nazis were just like regular Americans who voted Democrat or Republican. They needed jobs, they joined the party. It doesn't make them bad people." The next day, newspapers across America explode. Headlines scream, "Patton defends Nazis. General says Nazis just another political party." Eisenhower is in Berlin when he sees the papers. He's furious. He grabs the phone. "George, what the hell are you doing? Do you understand what you just said?" Patton is defiant. "I said the truth. We need these Germans to rebuild. Most of them weren't evil. They were just surviving. It doesn't matter. You can't say things like that. Somebody needs to say it." But Patton doesn't stop. Over the next few weeks, he makes more statements. On the Soviets, "We fought the wrong enemy. We should have let Germany destroy Russia. Then we destroyed Germany. Now we're stuck with Stalin, and he's worse than Hitler ever was." On rearming Germany, We're going to have to fight the Soviets eventually. When we do, we'll need German soldiers. We should start recruiting them now. On refugee camps. These displaced persons camps are a waste of resources. The Jews and Slavs need to just go home. Each statement is more explosive than the last, and Patton refuses to back down. He genuinely believes he's right, that everyone else is naive about the Soviet threat. He might have been correct about Stalin. History would eventually prove the Cold War was inevitable. But in 1945, with concentration camps still smoldering, with 6 million Jews murdered, with the world watching, Patton's words are unforgivable. Eisenhower calls him to headquarters in Frankfurt. September 28, 1945. It's not a conversation. It's an intervention. George, you're destroying everything we fought for. I'm trying to prevent the next war. By defending Nazis, by insulting Holocaust survivors. I'm not defending, yes you are. Every time you open your mouth, you defend them. Patton goes quiet. For a moment, Eisenhower thinks he's getting through. Then Patton says, "You've changed, Ike. You used to care about winning. Now you only care about politics." And that's when Eisenhower knows. The friendship is over. The man he trusted to win battles has become a liability he can't afford. "I'm relieving you of command of 3rd Army." Patton's face drains of color. "You can't. I already did. Effective October 7th. You'll take command of the 15th Army. It's a paper command. You'll write reports, compile historical records, but you won't command combat troops. It's a humiliation. Everyone in the Army will know. Patton got fired. Patton stands. His voice is ice. 26 years, Ike. We've known each other for 26 years. I won you North Africa. I won you Sicily. I won you France. I saved Bastogne when no one else could. And this is how you repay me?" Eisenhower doesn't look up. "Your victories don't give you the right to destroy the peace." Patton leaves, slams the door. They never have a real conversation again. October 7th, 1945. Patton takes command of 15th Army. It's headquartered in Bad Nauheim, a spa town. His army consists of clerks and historians. His job is to study 3rd Army's campaigns and write reports. For a man who lived for battle, it's torture. He writes to Beatrice, "I'm like an old warhorse put out to pasture. They don't want me anymore." He starts planning his return to America. Maybe he'll retire, write his memoirs, find something to do with his life that doesn't involve politics or desk jobs. He schedules his departure for December 10th, 1945, but on December 9th, everything changes. December 9th, 1945, a Sunday morning, cold and overcast. Patton is restless. He's been stuck at his headquarters for weeks, going through paperwork, attending boring meetings. He needs to get out. He decides to go pheasant hunting near Mannheim, about 75 miles south. His chief of staff, Major General Hobart Hap Gay, agrees to join him. At 11:45 a.m., they climb into Patton's 1938 Cadillac Model 75 limousine. PFC Horace Woodring is driving. Patton and Gay sit in the back seat. It's a routine trip. They've driven these roads dozens of times. The weather is clear enough. The roads are icy but manageable. They're on the main highway near Mannheim, approaching a railroad crossing at Käfertal. Woodring is driving about 35 miles per hour. Not fast, but not slow. Then, at exactly 11:45 a.m., an Army deuce-and-a-half truck makes a sudden left turn directly into their path. Woodring hits the brakes. The Cadillac skids on the ice. Too late. The impact isn't severe. The Cadillac's front end crumples slightly. The truck barely has a dent. Both vehicles are still drivable. Woodring and Gay are fine, not even bruised. The two soldiers in the truck, Tech Sergeant Robert L. Thompson and Private First Class Horace Woodring, climb out, shaken but unhurt. But in the back seat, Patton isn't moving. Gay leans over. "George, George." Patton's eyes are open, but his voice is weak. "I think I'm paralyzed." His forehead is bleeding from where he hit something. Maybe the roof, maybe the glass partition between the front and back seats. But the bleeding isn't serious. What's serious is that Patton can't feel his arms or legs. His neck is broken. The third cervical vertebra, a clean fracture that severed his spinal cord. From the shoulders down, George S. Patton is paralyzed. They rush him to the 130th Station Hospital in Heidelberg. Within hours, the best neurosurgeons in the European theater are working on him. Colonel Roy Glenn Sperling examines the x-rays and delivers the verdict. The injury is too high on the spine. We can't operate. Any surgery would kill him. Patton lies in a hospital bed, completely immobilized. They rig a traction device to keep his neck stable. He can't move, can't feed himself, can't do anything. But he's conscious, alert, and devastatingly aware of what's happened. Beatrice flies from America to be with him. When she arrives, Patton tries to smile. Well, B, it looks like this is one battle I won't win. For 12 days, Patton fights. Not with weapons, not with strategy, with sheer will. Doctors monitor him constantly. The paralysis doesn't improve, but it doesn't worsen either. For a few days, there's hope. Maybe he'll stabilize. Maybe they can eventually move him back to the United States. But here's where the story gets strange. The hospital has no guards. None. Despite Patton being one of the most famous generals in the world, despite the potential for Soviet agents or German resistance fighters, the hospital is completely unsecured. Anyone could walk in. Anyone could access his room. Medical records from those 12 days are incomplete. Some reports are missing entirely. Witnesses later give conflicting accounts of who visited, when, and why. And Eisenhower, who is still in Europe, still Supreme Commander, never visits. He sends messages. He receives updates. But he doesn't go to Heidelberg, doesn't visit the man who was once his best friend. Why? Official reason. He's too busy. Occupied Germany requires constant oversight. He can't leave Berlin for personal reasons. But historians have asked, if Patton was so important, if their friendship was so deep, how could Eisenhower not visit? Other generals made the trip. Beatrice was there. Even soldiers from Third Army came to stand vigil outside. But not Eisenhower. December 20th, 1945. Patton develops a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot that travels to his lung. The doctors fight to save him. But he's been immobile too long. His body is shutting down. On December 21st at 5:50 p.m., Patton's heart stops. Official cause of death: pulmonary embolism and, congestive heart failure due to paralysis from cervical spine fracture. Unofficial questions that have never been answered. 1. Why did the truck turn into Patton's path? The driver, Sergeant Thompson, said he didn't see the Cadillac, but the road was straight. Visibility was decent. How do you miss a large black limousine? 2. Why was there no security? Patton had enemies, Soviet agents, German resistance, even American politicians who hated him. Why was he left completely vulnerable? 3. Where are the missing medical records? Several days of documentation from the hospital are gone, lost, destroyed, classified. 4. Why didn't Eisenhower visit? The official story never made sense. Eisenhower had time for press conferences, meetings, ceremonies, but no time for Patton. Some historians believe the accident was exactly that, an accident. Bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. Others whisper about assassination, Soviet hit teams, CIA involvement, conspiracy theories that sound insane. Until you look at the gaps in the evidence, we'll probably never know the truth. What we do know is this. On Christmas Eve 1945, they buried George S. Patton Jr. in the American cemetery in Luxembourg. Thousands of soldiers from Third Army stood in the snow. Patton was placed at the head of his men, leading them even in death. And Eisenhower didn't attend. He was in the United States, official duties. For 10 months, Eisenhower didn't visit the grave until September 28, 1946. So, let's come back to where we started, September 28, 1946. Luxembourg American Cemetery. Eisenhower stands at Patton's grave. What is he thinking? Maybe he's remembering Camp Meade in 1919. 2 young officers studying tanks, dreaming about the future, laughing on porches late at night, planning a war that seemed distant. Maybe he's remembering North Africa, when Patton saved American forces after Kasserine, when he proved that Americans could fight. Maybe he's remembering Sicily, when Patton raced Montgomery to Messina and won, when he slapped those soldiers and Eisenhower had to decide, save him or sacrifice him. Maybe he's remembering Operation Fortitude, Patton commanding a phantom army, the deception that helped win D-Day, the humiliation of being sidelined while other men fought. Maybe he's remembering the breakout from Normandy, Third Army covering 600 miles in 6 weeks, the Germans fleeing in terror, Patton at his absolute best. Maybe he's remembering Bastogne, when Patton did the impossible, when he pivoted an entire army in a blizzard and saved 18,000 men, when even Eisenhower had to admit nobody else could have done it. Maybe he's remembering the arguments, the shouting matches about strategy, Patton wanting to drive to Berlin, Eisenhower saying no, politics versus warfare, alliance versus victory. Maybe he's remembering Bavaria, the press conferences, the Nazi comparisons, the statements that destroyed Patton's career, the final meeting, when Eisenhower fired him. Maybe he's remembering December 9th, the phone call telling him about the accident, the decision not to visit, the 12 days of silence. Maybe he's remembering December 21st, the report of Patton's death, the funeral he didn't attend. Or maybe, and this is what haunts historians, maybe he's thinking about something else entirely. Maybe he knows something. Maybe there are classified files. Maybe there are conversations that happened in closed rooms. Maybe the accident wasn't an accident. And maybe that's why he stands there so long. Because guilt is a heavy thing to carry. The cameras capture him placing the flowers, removing his cap, standing in silence for 5 minutes. But they don't capture the conversation that probably happens in his head. I'm sorry, George. Sorry I fired you. Sorry I chose politics over friendship. Sorry I didn't visit. Sorry I didn't come to your funeral. Sorry I couldn't unleash you the way you wanted. Sorry I held you back. Sorry I made you a decoy. Sorry I gave Montgomery your fuel. Sorry that in the end, I needed you more than I protected you. You won me the war, George, and I destroyed your career. Was it worth it? Did saving the alliance matter more than saving my friend? I don't know anymore. The other generals start walking back toward the cars. The photographers pack up their equipment. The cemetery guard checks his watch. But Eisenhower doesn't move. 5 minutes becomes 7, then 10. Finally, General Gay, Patton's old chief of staff, who survived the accident, walks over and gently touches Eisenhower's arm. "Sir, we should go." Eisenhower nods, puts his cap back on, takes one last look at the cross, then he walks away. He never visits again, never speaks publicly about Patton, never writes about him in his memoirs beyond basic military facts. Whatever thoughts Eisenhower had the day at the grave, he took them to his own grave in 1969. Here's what we know for certain. George S. Patton was one of the greatest combat commanders in American history. He won battles that others said couldn't be won. He saved thousands of lives by ending battles quickly. The Germans feared him more than any other Allied general. Dwight D. Eisenhower was the architect of Allied victory. He held together a fractious coalition. He made the hard decisions. He balanced warfare with politics. Without him, the Allies might have fractured. Together, they won World War II. But their friendship didn't survive the victory. Was it inevitable? Maybe. Patton was fire, brilliant, reckless, unstoppable. Eisenhower was ice, calm, diplomatic, strategic. Fire and ice can coexist, but they can't embrace. The war needed both men, but after the war, the world only had room for one kind of leader. Patton believed in total war, complete victory, no compromise. He saw the Soviet threat and wanted to confront it immediately, even if it meant chaos. Eisenhower believed in lasting peace, measured diplomacy, building systems that would prevent the next war. He saw the Soviet threat too, but he believed containment was smarter than confrontation. History suggests Eisenhower was right. The Cold War strategy he helped build eventually defeated the Soviet Union without World War III. But standing at that grave in September 1946, did Eisenhower feel right? Or did he feel like he'd sacrificed a friend on the altar of political necessity? We'll never know. What we do know is this: sometimes the hardest part of leadership isn't making the big decisions, it's living with them afterward. Eisenhower went on to become president. He shaped the modern world. He's remembered as a great leader. But on September 28, 1946, he was just a man standing at a grave, carrying flowers he should have brought 10 months earlier. And that silence, the 5 minutes he stood there, unable to leave, tells us more about their relationship than any words ever could. If this story moved you, subscribe for more Untold World II stories. Share this video if you think these complex friendships deserve to be remembered, and comment below. Do you think Eisenhower made the right choice? I want to hear your thoughts. This is History That Matters. See you in the next one.